Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Okay, hi, good morning. Thanks for coming. I'm happy to present the paper that I've been working on while here at Microsoft Research. And when I started out, my vague idea was to study creative use of digital environments, and then I sort of landed at physical humor in video game spaces. And so that we're on the same page, I'm going to show you a few clips right at the beginning of physical humor in video game spaces. These are, I'll show you a video by YouTube user Helix Snake. The video was actually posted after I had done an interview with him during my research. And in just a month after release, it got 2 million views, so it's become very popular. It's called Helix Snake's 50 Favorite Skate 3 Clips. It's a compilation. Let's go.
It's like edit it and post.
Okay, so you've seen some of this, and I especially want to show you this one particular clip. So the user is playing with the built-in mechanic in the game that is returning the skateboard to you as soon as it's far, so that it sort of like makes things easier for you while you're playing the game. But yeah, like here. The skateboard gets stuck behind the railing, and then the game positions the player on the railing, and he falls down. So what we've seen in these are some of the reactions of people who love Helix Snake's work. So what we saw in this video was humor that sort of echoes slapstick and cartoons, slapstick comedy and cartoons. At the same time, it resonates with the more absurdist, nonsensical humor that's been popular lately with shows like Adult Swim's Robot Chicken. And also, I think it resonates with the cult of the fail that is so popular in the internet memes, and sort of like the cult of randomness, of random funny things that circulate online. But what I find fascinating about this is the fact that this humor arises from the interplay of the player and the game, and that's what I'll be looking at. It's the interplay of the player and the game, and the process in which this kind of entertainment content is being produced. So why even bother studying this kind of humor and humor in general? I believe that by looking at humor, we can gain understanding that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. To quote Bataille, let us suppose that which induces laughter is not only unknown, but unknowable. In other words, the unknown nature of the laughable would be not accidental, but essential. What he's addressing is the fact that no theory of humor has been able to explain how humor works. Malaby similarly says, the humor that occurs in formal structures is closely linked to their inherent contradictions. So I think that by looking at humor, we can learn more about the experience of the inconsistencies, contingencies, the strangeness of digital media and video games specifically. The existing literature on humor in digital spaces have mostly been focusing on technology as platform. As Schiffman puts it, in addition, the internet's flexibility, ubiquitous presence, and accessibility enable users to transform existing memes and create new ones very easily. It's from her work on YouTube memes. YouTube stands out as a unique platform both for the propagation of memes and for their research. But in my work, I'm not really interested that much in the platform, but more in the engine, in the machinery, in how it works and what role technology plays in the creation of this kind of humor. And while doing that, taking many cues from film studies, Tom Gunning has written extensively about the role of technology in early silent comedy. This is a picture from the sprinkler Sprinkled. And as you can see, the the device that is used to create the comedic effect is the focus of attention. As Gunning puts it, as a mediatory visual element which takes some time to operate, the device possesses its own fascination. The enjoyment of the gag lay at least partly in watching the device work. Later, people like Buster Keaton developed this idea of mischief device, and Buster Keaton himself was building these complex contraptions that were both on and off screen that sort of helped him realize his vision of slapstick comedy. And I think that the creators of the videos that I just showed you do something very similar. They bring out the fascination with the machine. They use the machine for basically creating mischief. Although the mischief here is not against a victim, but most of the time it's mischief against their own avatar, as we will see and as we have seen. But the fascination with cause and effect and this exploration of what can be done and what effects doing certain things can have, I think are very similar. And that's the reason why throughout my paper I'm calling the creators of these videos mischief makers, and I started to call this genre of video that doesn't really have a specific name, gameplay mischief video. So the mischief makers are working with games, and we need to establish some sort of like conceptualization of games for this kind of research. And games have been theorized in many ways as rule systems, as storytelling devices, social activities. But I don't really think either of this applies here, because mischief makers are not really engaging that much with the rules and objectives of the game. They're not telling stories, and most of the time they're actually working alone, which is what they actually told me. Like they're working with the game, and it's a pretty solitary activity. Although like later they publish it in public fora. So I think there's an alternative. We can look at games as domains of contingency. We can see them as spaces to explore, spaces of possibilities, spaces in which things can happen, and in which we can experiment with poking at different things and seeing what can be done. This idea was brought into game studies by Thomas Malaby, but first, contingency is a property of that which is neither necessary nor impossible. So that these things that can happen, they do not have to happen. Some of them are rare, some of them are unexpected and funny, some of them are pretty normal. What is specific about the game is that it's a domain of contrived contingency that generates interpretable outcomes. And by contrived, we mean that there are some rules, but some mechanics, but they can be sort of skewed and bent in ways that produce interesting, unexpected, and funny instances. Malaby goes on to say, games are distinctive in their achievement of a generative balance between the open-endedness of contingencies and the reproducibility of conditions for action, by which he basically says that things can happen, but we can also try to make them happen again. So there's this idea of reproducibility that plays an important role, as we will see. So how did I do my research? The basic research question was the following: how does the technology behind the simulated space affect the ways in which techniques of physical humor are deployed by the creators of gameplay mischief videos? And by techniques, here I mean sort of like it's a content-based term. It's the devices that are being deployed in the text. I was looking at 3 open-world 3D action games: Grand Theft Auto 4, Red Dead Redemption, and Skate 3. They're all temporary. One of the main reasons why I picked these was that they are popular with mischief makers, so that there's a lot of videos. They are similar enough to be comparable. They're all third-person games, which means that the avatar is by default visible while the players playing the game. And they're open-world games with focus on action. At the same time, they're different enough so that the comparison is interesting. So they feature different kinds of actions, whereas whether it's driving and shooting in GTA 4, horseback riding and shooting in Red Dead Redemption, and skateboarding without shooting in Skate 3. Actually, like, there's not much shooting in the Mischief gameplay videos. No, I just realized, because there's just not enough bodily motion in shooting that would make it that comical, I would say. So I based my research on the platform of YouTube, because that's the major platform for sharing these. I did 2 sets of YouTube searches with the keywords containing the titles of the games and the words funny, silly, and hilarious, which in the preliminary sort of searches turned out to be the most frequent ones to describe this kind of video. And among the 200 top most relevant results as given to me by YouTube, I included those with more than 100,000 views. And I arrived at a corpus of 57 videos. GTA 4 is obviously the most popular here. Among the authors of the videos, I contacted 11 people who were still actively working within the genre, and out of those, 5 agreed to be interviewed. And I'll be referring to them using their avatars. I mostly did open-ended interviews with them on Skype. So this is Bobby's your uncle from the UK, who's been working on in GTA 4. Fred Brown from the Netherlands, who's been working on in both Red Dead Redemption and Skate 3. Hazen Freak from Germany, who's been working in GTA 4. Helix Snake works in both Skate 3 and GTA 4, who's from the US, and the Ninja Cowboy, who's also from the US, and who's working in GTA 4. All of them work in other games too. I'm only mentioning the ones that are in my selection. All of them identify as entertainers. They're actively seeking audience, and they also consider themselves authors. So I decided not to pseudonymize them in the current draft of the paper to sort of respect their authorial individuality and pay tribute to it. Okay, those were the interviews. And then I did close readings of the five to most viewed videos in the corpus per game. And I was looking both at their structural features and at the types of humor that are being employed. And I was using user comments to sort of guide me through the material and point me to what's relevant. And during the analysis, I was identifying the sort of patterns in the work of mischief makers that relate to the different kinds of humor that can be found in the material. And mostly, I was looking at sort of like conceptual categories of humor rather than content-based. And you will see that in a minute. First, before we start talking about the process of making these videos, we have to know a little bit about the genre and the social setting in which it's being produced and viewed. There actually is a genre, I would say. I was talking about these montages. They're usually from 3 to 10 minutes long, and they're non-narrative sequence of gags that are usually quite often set to comedic music, such as the Yakety Sax song. Do you know that one? The Benny Hill theme. It's very popular among mischief makers. They have this seemingly haphazard sort of sequential form, and the titles sort of reflect that. GTA 4, bloopers, glitches, and silly stuff. Grand Theft Auto 4, funny crashes, stunts, and fails. So there's this idea of it being a sequence of funny accidents that happen in the game. In a way, it's related to the structure of shows like America's Funniest Home Videos, and these videos also serve all sorts of functions to both the individual author and the audience that watches it. It's obviously entertainment, and the mischief makers do want to entertain people. It's also documentation of the game, and as such, it shows what can be done in the game, and it's a demonstration of skill, it's a demonstration of tricks, and also players can share tricks and glitches with other gamers through these videos. And in a way, it sort of contributes to the circulation of what Mia Gonzalez calls gaming capital, the knowledge and the achievements of people who play games. It's also an instance of high-performance play. These people are very skilled players. They're really good at what they're doing, and as I said, they're showing off. In a way, this sort of this relates to the beginnings of machinima, when people were recording demos and playthroughs, and they do speedruns. But this is just like to say that this is a sort of different genre than machinima. And it would be. I don't really want to get into that discussion, but it's related. Also, the value of novelty is very important, because these people have to create content on a fairly regular basis. All of them do it on a fairly regular basis. So there's this pressure to outdo themselves, for them to outdo themselves, and there's this pressure to explore and find new things that can be done in the game. So these are the things that sort of on a more general level affect their work. And now I will start talking about the humor techniques, and more specifically, I'll be talking about how these are being deployed in the interaction between the player and the game. Incongruity humor is based on sort of mismatch between different frames of reference, and games make this kind of humor very, very easy to make, because they give out this conflicting information about how we should interpret what's happening on screen. And a lot of this humor is enabled by some of these more like structural features of the games, especially the dissonance between the visual realism and the not so realistic physics. As Bobby Toranko puts it, I think it's just the right blend of kind of reality and complete non-reality, particularly the physics engine, because it's a representation of real life, but it's nothing like real life in reality. And I think that's why people find these videos funny. It's exactly like a cartoon. Also, the players create incongruity by their own performances. So they quite often, or most of the time, ignore the objectives of the game, and they do something else that the game is designed for. As Helix Snakes puts it, it wouldn't be quite as funny if it was a game designed to do this sort of things. But the fact that it's a skateboarding thing and that you can do all these ridiculous things that have almost nothing to do with skateboarding adds to some of the humor. So many of the things that these people do in the games are not recognized by the game, but they can be achieved in the game by various configurations of bodies in space. And this creates this semiotic contingency, this uncertainty of interpretation. So you can have like many configurations of objects in the game world, and they can be interpreted in different ways. And mischief makers take advantage of this. I'll show you this little clip from Red Dead Redemption that was very popular among the viewers. Let's see. Okay, so in this video, the author, Fled Bryan, used the, you see it? Oh, probably, it'll be okay. Used this cheat called Hick, which enables the otherwise very respectable main character, John Marston, to get drunk immediately at any place in the game world. Otherwise, you can only do it in bars. And what happens is that the player sort of loses control over the character, and all kinds of things can happen. Okay, I might have. This might have been. Sorry. Let me look for the particular clip.
I know where this one's going.
Okay, so it's this one. Okay, so you can see that. I'll play it once more. So you could see the semiotic contingency there. People have been, users have been interpreting this clip in many different ways. And I would say that it's the semiotic contingency that's so attractive about this particular clip. People have been interpreting it in mostly two ways: that John Marston is pickpocketing, and that John Marston is gay. And as I said, I'm not really looking at the sort of like the content of the humor here, but I think it's sort of the openness to interpretation that's really fascinating here. And that's what the authors of these videos take advantage of. Just by configuring bodies in space, they can create all kinds of scenes that can be interpreted as comical. Another technique is coincidence. Mischief makers create these coincidences, these very sort of rare, funny, serendipitous events. And in many ways, they're taking advantage of of the contingency that the games already generate, because they are lively places. They're not static movie sets, but they're even though it's simulated, like they're lively places. Helix Snake says, a lot of the time I'm just screwing around and something funny happens that I'm not even planning. The Ninja Cowboy. When you have chaos, something will happen. It almost looks like I was in complete control of that situation, but in fact, it was by the physics of the game that worked in my favor. And but just basing one's career as an entertainer on chance is not enough. So people come up with all these strategies that integrate contingency in their comedic practice. So this is what the Ninja Cowboy did. This is based on a very trivial hack of the game Grand Theft Auto 4, in which you can change the friction of cars in the game to whichever number. And when you change it to relative 9, the cars don't really obey the laws of physics anymore. Then they start flying all over the place. Yeah, imagine Yakety Sax playing to this. It's not really a hack that the Ninja Cowboy found himself. It had been circulating on YouTube for some time, which sort of highlights the fact that it's also like a very social kind of activity. Oh, this is edited to the music of Yakety Sax, which makes it much funnier. Even the Ninja Cowboy, when I was interviewing him, said that Yakety Sax just makes everything funny. Okay, so this was a hack, but usually mischief makers would learn about the physics engine so that they can skillfully manipulate it to create funny stuff. And they are all advanced expert players, and they possess very intimate knowledge of the game engine. As Fled Bryan says, first of all, I just play the game and try to feel the game engine. After that, I try to push the engine to its limits and see what comes out. So that's one of the ways, just learning to squeeze funny things out of the engine. Another would be just perseverance and practice. Helix Snakes is especially proud of the videos that took him a long time to accomplish. Like the one where you lay down your board, but then I go between those two pipes. That one took hundreds of tries. And this is also interesting, and that wasn't really the focus of the research, but he keeps using the second person pronoun and the first person pronoun in like one sentence, and he does it a lot. But that's for next time. So we saw that the players, the mischief makers, take advantage of the contingency, but at the same time they have to exert some sort of control to streamline and tame the contingency in a way that produces the desired results. Slapstick is a mode of humor that's very frequent in these videos, and it's as Lombana defined it, it's a mode of comedy characterized by the use of physical violence, acrobatics, knockabouts, collisions, and horseplay. And similarly, Bobby Durankle says about his humor in GTA 4, it's about cars, it's about ragdoll physics and things like that. So it's about timing and physical interactions. So now let's take a look at this guy's popular video from GTA 4, which is called 100 Ways to Die in GTA 4. It was actually, the concept behind the video is not new. There have been many 100 Ways to Die videos from many different games. And he admitted in the interview that he actually created this video because 100 Ways to Die was a popular YouTube search, and he just wanted to make a very popular video. But let's look at what the player. I mean, you probably have some basic or advanced experience with games like this. So let's try to imagine what the player is actually doing in these clips.
Whoa.
So what's interesting about this video is that most of the time, the player doesn't really play the game as much as he's being played by the game. Most of these clips show instances of being out of control rather than being in control. And I think this resonates very nicely with one of the theories that are trying to explain physical humor, and this one was devised by Henri Bergson in the year 1900. He basically said that we laugh at people who lost control of their bodies because we feel superior to them. And he said that we laugh every time a person gives us the impression of being a thing. We laugh at movement without life. We laugh when somebody's body reminds us of a mere machine. And I think that's pretty much what we saw in this video. We saw a person becoming a thing, a person becoming a physical object that is being thrown about by the physics engine. And I think there's like a very specific objectification of this kind of humor in games are ragdoll physics that are used in games to handle the physics of falling, dying, and otherwise inconvenienced bodies. And instead of explaining to you what ragdoll physics are, I can show you this. Oh, I cannot, because we have no sound. Okay, so what it said is that ragdoll physics are being used in games to provide some sort of realistic procedural animation of falls and yeah, these are some examples from other games. But usually what happens is that when you're controlling your character, the animations are pre-made. They are made by this is just some of the, these are the basic physical models of how ragdoll physics work. So while you're controlling your character, the animation is is pre-made, is based on motion capturing. But as soon as you lose control due to different reasons, you might be caught in an explosion or just die. The physics of the body starts to be handled by this procedural physics simulation, and often with exaggerated results, and often this simulation is pretty complex. So it might, and your body might end up in very comical and improbable situations. Ragdoll physics have been a huge part of these mischief videos and other kinds of humor in video games. So in a way, what we see here is the humor arising from this strange, of this interesting dialectic between control and lack of control, and it's this shifting of control over the character that is responsible for much of it. And the final technique I'm going to look at is nonsense that we already mentioned. And this is usually achieved in these videos through glitches, perceived malfunctions of software. And people have seen glitches as in sort of like positive and subversive ways, as a crack that can widen onto new vistas and better mistakes, something like a very aesthetically pleasing thing. And at the same time, glitches are something that is being used by players quite often. For example, by players to gain unfair advantage over other players. Those are glitches in games that sort of can help you like make more gold or whatever. The mischief makers sort of fall somewhere in between these two. They're taking advantage of the glitches. They take advantage of their capacity to generate these contingent events that are very unexpected and very strange, and can be funny. Also, let me now show you a few glitches. You've already seen some, but there will be more. This is by Helix Snake from Skate 3. This obviously some problem with collision detection. Once again, we saw the character fall through the polygon in the floor, and this is a glitch that is reproducible, and it has its name. It's become popular among the players of Skate 3. This particular glitch is called the Super Dude glitch, and it just happens that if you do a certain trick, you can fall through the floor, and then like many weird things can happen with the body of the player. And another popular glitch that's being used by mischief makers is the swing set glitch from GTA 4. How it works is there's a swing set in Liberty City, the place where the city where the game takes place, and if you approach it from the right direction, it will just propel your car into the air for no reason. This is used for the comical effect of just motion and collisions, but these glitches are also used quite often for people to get to places they otherwise wouldn't be able to get to, and thus opening more opportunities for contingent events. So what's laughable about this? Hasenfreak explains it this way. There's no real joke that you can laugh about, but you must laugh because you just think, what the fuck is happening now? And if you have a video where you see a lot of this stuff, you imagine that it could happen to you as well. So he's noting this disorienting quality of this kind of humor. These scenes sort of remind us of the constructedness of the illusion of the game, and they bring the attention to the game engine that is failing at that particular moment. it reveals the fragility of illusion, and what we see in many of these is actually another interesting thing, which is kind of a reversal of the ragdoll physics phenomenon. In these, often the inanimate is being animated. So once again, we like see these shifts in agency and control over what's happening in the game. Quite often, the use of these glitches leads people to believe that the games are poor products, especially with Skate 3, but Helix Snakes consistently refutes this in the comments on his YouTube channel. He's saying, I'm seeing a lot of people criticizing this game, saying it wasn't tested properly, etc. That isn't true. These glitches mostly have to be done on purpose, and glitchy areas are mostly out of the way. So it really takes a skilled, expert, consummate player to be able to take advantage of these glitches and set this contingency machine into motion and create these funny scenes. So these were the 4 basic techniques that I identified and the way mischief makers use them. So what are the conclusions of this? So technology provides not just a tool, it's not a static movie set, but mischief makers approach it as a lively space in which things can be done. They turn game engines that are otherwise largely inconspicuous, and they're there to support the gameplay and storytelling, into mischief devices to entertain their audience. And we also saw that much of the humor in these videos is co-created in a dialectic relationship between control over the game and contingency, or control and lack of control. What now? I think video games like this, open world video games, are like a very extreme example of a digital environment that is lively and that is generating a lot of contingency. It would be interesting to look at other kinds of mischief making in multiplayer environments. I was looking only at single player environments, or in more sort of open environments, such as animation studios, such as Gary's Mod. But I also think that contingency is a useful concept for looking at online humor at large, because a lot of it is based on these notions of randomness, serendipity, bringing weird, unexpected things together. So I think that's also one of possible directions. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
So we have the room for a little bit. Let's open up the question and discussion. If Yaro, if you just want to pick out from what you lead Q&A.
Okay, so yeah, sure. I was about to say that. So yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And the microphone.
Oh, we don't need
here.
the mic. They have mics in the.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Where do you see videos like Leroy Jenkins in the context of videos like this?
Where do I see them?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess Leroy Jenkins is more like control because the guy's killing his whole guild and just going crazy. But
yeah, it's a multiplayer environment, and I think, in a way, he's taking advantage of the fact that like it's kind of very easy to mess up in an environment like this, and like things are like happening very rapidly. So, the effects of your actions are like very easily observable and like very fast. So I think in a way that it does play with the technology as well. But yeah, but in many ways it's a social environment. It's a joke on other people not really being made in such a close relationship with the technology itself. Clara?
So, what is the threshold from humor to horror?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some of the glitches in Red Dead Redemption, for example, where they got the animation of a animal on a person, like Cougar Man, or like a flying woman, or even in things like FIFA, for example, where
they have a glitch where the legs keep walking at the same level, but then the trunk of the person is like sinking into, and it's kind of like this spider-like, you know, and it's really creepy. And I'm fascinated by that kind of boundary, like where do we set it? Because there's a point where I think Bergson had something about this, but Marvin Minsky also has theories that humor is a defense mechanism and against things that we don't understand, you know, like nonsensical. But where is, like, there's a point where the nonsensical seems to go beyond that, and that's horrifying, and you cannot deal with it. So it's like, is there, like, have the subjects that you've interviewed, like, shown anything that would be like a like a not funny glitch, for example?
They haven't showed me. But there's. So the first thing is that you're right about the fact that like these emotions are related, and a lot of the literature on humor is talking about that, especially Bataille, who's saying who's talking about humor as sort of a step into the unknown. He's saying, okay, humor is just sort of one ways of formulating this. It can also be horror and nausea or something else. In these videos, it very much depends on how they're framed. Okay, so these like Skate 3 glitches usually have funny titles. The other ones have funny music playing to them. So you're sort of made to interpret in this comical way. But I don't really know where to put threshold. I think it's a lot about framing. There's this video with bird people from Red Dead Redemption that was in my corpus, but it kind of doesn't really. It's not really in the genre of the gameplay mischief video, but it basically shows people spawning as birds. So you have these bird people flying around, and that one is framed as funny by using music, by using the song "I Believe I Can Fly." Yeah, so I think it depends on framing, but you're right that there certainly is
Yeah, like that
connection.
makes perfect sense. I don't know if Cougar Man would be funny with a yakety yak, and maybe somebody should do that and see if it's funny.
Yeah, then the question is like, why am I looking at humor and not like extreme sort of emotional, content that like evokes extreme emotional reactions at large? And I think that in part is because when people create when these things happen and they're humorous, there are things to be sort of savored and shared. Whereas like some of these things are really annoying or kind of shocking or not really fun, so people don't share them. So I think that people are more likely to share these inconsistencies and incongruities that are funny than the other ones.
My cough was not meant to signal.
It worked.
Is it me? Oh, yeah. Can you say a bit more to explain the language techniques of humor rather than genre or whatever?
Yeah.
Just to unpack it a little bit more?
Yeah, so this is actually complicated. So humor scholars use the term technique to describe like the devices that they identify by looking at texts. But in my paper, I'm more like shifting towards seeing techniques as sort of strategies of performance. But that's it probably didn't really come out like that strongly in this presentation.
So it's a way of formulating like a produced intentionality to the.
Yeah.
So does some humor not? Is some humor not classifiable as a technique?
Well, things happen on accident.
Okay.
And that's actually many of funny videos from games are things that happen on accident. But then these people are creating humor on purpose. So I would call these techniques.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Megan?
So I noticed when the video came up that had the ragdoll physics and definition, was that put in by you, or was that?
Sorry?
Was that put in by you, or was that like the
The definition?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it
that
was
term?
that was taken from an online TV show from GameSpot, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess this is sort of like a method question. You have such a sophisticated group of users in a lot of ways, just in terms of describing their own strategies, and just curious how that sort of maybe, I don't know how that worked with your research, or how you sort of understand your research partners or subjects, or whether you're planning on sharing your paper with them, or I'm just
Yeah. They want to
chip this with
they
them.
want to read the paper, and they're interested. And you were right. They're expert players, and they're also very like tech savvy people. Because I mean, what I didn't mention is that it actually takes a lot of time to edit these videos.
Yeah, I bet.
And they're very good at that and at playing the games. So it's a skill set that's actually, I mean, it's probably getting more and more widespread, but it's actually not like totally easy to come by. So these people are like very specific group of people, and in many ways the language they use is language of an expert. They're talking about engines, they're talking about ragdoll physics, they're talking about these things in very technical terms.
Yeah.
So it's not really just like screwing around, although they say it is screwing around, but it's like very informed kind of screwing around.
Okay.
But they're also, you said something about career, right? So this isn't just a light hobby for them, they're making money off of this.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't really I don't really talk about in the paper, but it came up, it came up many times. Not all of these, but all of these except for the Ninja Cowboy are YouTube partners, and they get YouTube money from their work. Although none of them has it as their primary income, but it in a way is a career. And Helix Snake is trying really hard now to build on the success of this video that I showed you at the beginning, and he's been trying to work with new games such as Scribblenauts, which is like a sort of very open worldy game with a lot of possibilities. So he's actually making skating videos in that game, even though it's not a game about skating. So he's sort of like reversing his strategy, and it's so yeah. This actually exerts pressure on them to create new content and to come up with new things, because the thing about this kind of humor is that it can get old really fast. So you have to come up with new stuff to do, and maybe like choose new games.
I just want to say I really enjoyed watching your project evolve over the last 12 weeks. I mean, that you were able to accomplish this in 12 weeks, and my hat's off to you for that. I had a question about how you're distinguishing platforms as Schiffman understands them, and how you want to think about engines and machinery as something distinct. So can you just say a bit more about what makes those different?
Okay, so I think it's a leading question in a way.
It might be.
At the beginning, I was one of the original ideas when looking at these was inspired by the writings of Bruno Latour, who's writing about mediators and intermediaries, and he's the author who's connected to actor network theory, and what he's arguing is basically that there are, like, we can look at actors and all kinds of things in two different ways. Mediators are those, intermediaries are those who just pass the information along. They basically don't change the nature of the thing that's being transferred, be it like information or force. Whereas mediators are those who sort of transform the meaning of things, or transform the thing that is being transferred. And I think that when Schiffman is talking about platforms, she's thinking about these digital technologies as intermediaries. They're, to a large extent, they're there to become a space in which things are distributed. It doesn't really change. She does not really take into account the ways in which this may actually change the nature of the content. So she's looking at it as a distribution platform, whereas I'm looking more at the ways in which these technologies can contribute to shaping this kind of humor. Okay.
Less of a theoretical question, but more just sort of a practical one. How aware do you think the game companies are that this exists, and do you think that this is something that they're probably going to, because one of the things that you had said previously is that two of the games that are the most popular, I guess it's Red Dead and GTA, have these in-game like recording things, which clearly indicates that they're aware that people like to record their stuff and put it out there. So do you think that as this genre or category evolves, that the game makers are going to take that into consideration more, or do you think it's something they're just going to kind of be aware of and leave to the side?
Yeah, that's a good question. In Skate 3D, the recording mode is, skating is something that is like primarily done for like showing off, right? That's a huge part of skating as such. In GTA 4, it's people started out like filming these stunts, like these incredible things they could do in the game, and I think that like this kind of recording and editing and streaming is becoming more popular, and I do think that companies are aware of that. But at the same time, these games are trying to serve multiple purposes to multiple audiences. So like they do so many things at the same time, and GTA 4 is a very interesting game in that regard because you can do all kinds of funny things, and the physics are really kind of strange and funny. But at the same time, the storyline of GTA 4 is actually kind of dark and gritty and not so much fun. So I would like to see what happens next, because I think the stories of GTA are getting progressively kind of more realistic, but this would sort of suggest these videos would sort of suggest that people like to play around more than follow the story. But I think that's the nature of games. They're like of contemporary video games. They're just so complex things that can be used for so many purposes. And then and as for like the slapstick humor, there are independent games that play with this, and there are a lot of them, and they're actually pretty successful. Games like Quap, in which you're supposed to like keep this character running, and it's very hard to control, and like this humor is built basically on the dialectic of control and lack of control. There's a game called Octodad, which is one of my favorite games. It's about an octopus disguised as a human, and you sort of have to do things so that he's not recognized as octopus, and it's really hard to control him. And it's a very funny little game. So yeah, these kind of mechanics are being used in independent games too.
Is there I'm wondering about sort of where these kinds of videos fit in a typology of game videos that you can see on YouTube, right? So you have the walkthroughs, you have the here was my awesome raid I'm so proud of, and you have the machinima, and you've got the humor blooper glitchy things. Are there others as well?
Yeah.
Horror?
There's stunt videos are very popular, especially in games that feature a lot of like motion and physics. In GTA 4, the stunt videos are actually get more views than the comedy videos. They get up to like 25 million views than most successful ones. So that's one thing. Then there are fail videos that document these fails that are not necessarily framed as funny, but it's related. And another genre that's similar is griefing video that is being produced in multiplayer environments. And it's also mischief, but it's mischief at the expense of other people. The Ninja Cowboy actually makes griefing videos, but just like appearing in a multiplayer environment, just like starting doing strange things and inconveniencing other players and waiting for their reactions, basically.
This is really interesting and it's given me a lot to think about, so thank you.
Thank you.
I know you're focused here more on issues of contingency rather than on social activity, but at the same time it seems sort of implicit in your methodology there's a social measure, right? Because you're looking at the ones that are really popular.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wondered if you spend any time or have any plans to look at ones that were maybe by these same producers but were not popular, or if you talked with them in their interviews about sort of ones that maybe had failed, same techniques or different techniques, or why and what that might tell us about the successful ones.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I did hear about it in interviews. The thing is, I'll probably refer you to work by Hector Postigo, who's like doing really interesting work about YouTube as such, and his work is on gameplay commentary mostly, but it's kind of similar. The dynamics of YouTube are very unpredictable, and I was going for the very popular videos because I viewed this genre as popular entertainment. But then if you look at the individual authors, it's quite often these get so many views just by some like kind of strange contingency of the YouTube system. It gets featured in on a popular website for some reason. This can bring in a lot of views. Hasenfreak actually told me, I was asking him, so why do you think this particular video was so popular? And what he said was, it was just luck. It was mostly by luck. I mean, I kind of like it, but I think I've done better. But it was mostly luck that made this popular. So I mean, the workings of YouTube are like very intricate and contingent, and it's another thing to explore.
So I really appreciated that you put in the one scene where it's the character landing and sticking his hand under the other man's ass. And you do a nice job of addressing that. But in some ways, that's the one place, and I know, because I know the corpus, that there's a chunk of videos that are precisely playing on the contingency of homoerotics. That might be what's funny.
Yeah.
There's a line of storytelling that seems to happen in that, maybe, that's different than a car flipping and, decapitating someone. So if someone was going to meanly ask you, where's the gender analysis, where's the discussion of how sexuality is something in the mix, what would you say?
Well, I would say that it certainly comes into the mix because all of his humor is based on bodies in motion, and this gives rise to sexual interpretation like very easily. And I was trying to look at this from this perspective, and I was actually, to be honest, I was expecting the videos to be more sexist than they actually are, or like homophobic. Even the comments. I mean, there are still homophobic comments and sexist comments, but there were fewer than I was expecting. But yeah, you do get these comments that interpret it in these ways. Especially when there's not so much homoerotic, but even when there's main character just falls on a female character. And it's getting interpreted as rape, and but it's also getting interpreted in other ways. So I think it would be like a valid thing to do, to look at the comments, but for me it was largely the semitic contingency created by this configuration of bodies.
Follow that up and ask, did the creators themselves have any reflections?
I was gonna say that I know it's sort of a different topic, but they don't really like to give away the interpretation of what's happening. I think I wasn't asking about this specifically, but I was asking about violence. And they were saying, They are violent, but it's not just the violence. The violence has to be funny in a way. It has to be unexpected for it to be interesting. So I would say that yes, I mean with these kinds of interpretations too, there usually is something more to it, like the way in which this happens, like yeah, the guy just falling drunk, or the aerial rape, when somebody's falling on somebody else. And so on. But there is this dimension to it, definitely.
I think we can let you off the hook now.
Okay, thank you.